All right, what's your name?
Wayne Smith. My name is oh, I'm sorry. Delete, cut, start over.
No, we're gonna keep it rolling. We're editing it later, Dad.
Okay.
All right.
My name is Wayne Smith, and I was born in Dayton, Ohio in 1945. And when I would really get on my mom's nerves, she says, I think they gave me the wrong baby because it was wartime and there was a lot of switching going on. So I guess I'm a Smith.
Have you ever seen a picture of your mom?
I have, yes. I've seen a picture of my mother.
Is there any doubt that you're a Smith when you look at that picture?
There is absolutely no doubt. She is 1/4 Cherokee Indian. So that makes me what, 1/8? My mom and dad met at a very young age. I think my mom was only 13 when they first met, and I think they married at, I think mom was 14 and dad was 17, and they actually ran away from Hazard, Kentucky, hitchhiked to California, California, the state of California. They went out west. They was on the road. Mom used to tell me about the times they slept in the barn on the way, and how that cut. Oh, okay.
They when did they get married?
I am not for sure what year they got married. I'm thinking that I don't even know when mom was born. I think my dad was born in 21, I think. And mom's 3 years younger than him. So she would have been born in 25, I guess 24, 25, 1925. They were just young kids trying to, they loved each other, and they was trying to cut out a life of a different life. They had heard about it, but they wanted to experience it. And anyway, somehow they wound up in Dayton, Ohio. My dad, one of his first jobs was, you're not gonna believe this, but he was a painter. And he told me the story about his boss having all these nice cars and apartment buildings, and he worked for him, and he told me an incident that he was somehow in the garage with his boss's car with open paint, and it got all over the car, and his boss went off on him, and so I think he quit that job, and man, I'm telling you stuff I didn't know. But anyway, then I was born in Dayton, Ohio, and how we first came to Cincinnati area, I'm not for sure, but I do remember that I was like 3 or 4 years old, and Dad had a Studebaker. Oh, I remember now. They were taking care of a truck stop. They were actually managers and custodians and whatever. But anyway, they had a Studebaker. I forget what year it was, but they had this Studebaker, and my brother Ben, which is probably only 3 or 4 years old, somehow he got up in that Studebaker, and he let go of the emergency brake, and it was parked on a hill, a cliff, really. And I ran to the Studebaker and I hopped in it, and I didn't know which was a gas and which was a brake, and I just started doing whatever I could. Somehow slowed it down so somebody could help. But we were headed for the big cliff, and so I remember that. And growing up, it was out on Dixie Highway, on Route 25 someplace. Me and Mom passed it a few years ago, and I said, well, that's where that was, that truck stop was. Of course, it's all built up now. But I was probably 4 or 5, but I knew I could start. I was probably 4 or 5 when I started stomping on the brake and stuff. But I remember my Uncle Elvin coming in. That's Mom's brother. He came in from someplace. No, he was home on leave from war, and he had this real neat car. It was I think it was a T model Ford, and it had a rumble seat in the back. And I remember them lifting me and Ben up in that rumble seat, and he took us for a ride down Route 25. That's just some of the kid things. And I had an allergy, or I don't know if you call it an allergy, but I love fudgsicles, and I was allergic to fudgsicles, but I loved them. And my mom was in charge of all the stuff you bought inside the gas station and the truck stop, so I had access to fudgsicles. But every time I stole one of them fudgsicles, my lips would swell up. I mean, my whole face would swell up, turn inside out, and my body told on me every time I violated. But anyway, I remember that. I remember having bed bugs. Yeah, it just come to me.
Lord Jesus.
And I remember how Mom treated them bed bugs. No, wait a minute. That wasn't bed bugs. No, I swallowed something that I shouldn't swallow. I think it was Clorox. And Mom put 2 raw eggs down. She held my nose and opened my mouth and put 2 raw eggs down. And needless to say, it all come up. Or went down.
How did you confuse bed bugs with
But I do remember bed bugs. I remember Mom going off. I remember Mom going off and saying, I will not live here with these bugs. And she started stripping beds and throwing sheets, and I don't know what all she did, but she took care of it, whatever it was, because that was the end of the bed bugs. But I kind of put them two together because they happened about the same time. I'm just really spilling my guts here to my family.
Is that what's your earliest memory?
Oh, my earliest memory is when Mom and Dad, I don't know what time frame this was, but out there by Landmark Baptist by GE, it was called St. Rita's Farmhouse, and it was a deaf mute school. I think it was for the blind and the deaf, maybe just the deaf. And but anyway, it's still there today. The thing I remember is this big, humongous barn that sat out away from the house, and I remember that barn catching on fire. And I remember it seemed like there was 100 people with 100 buckets, and they had lines going into that barn trying their best to put it out. But they gave up. It burnt to the ground. Everything in it burnt. I don't know what all was in it, but I remember the flames, and I remember the night, and I remember all the action and the activity. And right before that is when I was playing Superman, and I had a diaper around my neck, and I was just going through the house, and Mom had one of these washing machines, you know, the kind that they say don't get you in the ringer. And but anyway, I thought I was Superman, and I just stuck my hand right in them rollers, and it, as you can see now, I had a 3rd-degree burn. It took this thumb off. See all these stitches here? Can you zoom in on them stitches? All the way around. They said, and they put me in a cast, and they said if this thumb turned blue, they'd have to amputate it. And Mom and Dad went into prayer, and it never did turn blue. And I can throw it out of joint today, throw it completely out of joint. But you can still see the scar where the thing was trying to pull my whole body through. I guess I was about, I maybe a little bit younger than Conrad, maybe 3.5 or 4. But I remember getting in the cookie jar too. Wow. Caught red-handed one day. My hand was right in the cookie jar. And Mom come in and slapped me off the counter.
Do you have any memory of vacations when you were a kid?
Oh yeah, we had multiple vacations. We had camping trips. We had swimming trips. We'd always seemingly wind up down in Breathitt County in the cornfields, or in playing hide and seek, or swimming in the big creek down there. It goes through Haddocks in Breathitt County. We'd get up on these big rocks. I guess I was maybe 8 or 9 by then, and I would just dive right off of the rocks right into, and it would be as high as this ceiling. It was all fun time. My dad never could swim very good, but he could paddle. He'd paddle like this, and I'd laugh at him. We went on several vacations. I remember one vacation we went on down in the Smokies. You know these big tires where the park rangers look out over, I guess, look for smokers, whatever they look for. I remember us walking all the way up this big tire. We all got up top. My dad had a phobia of height, and I'll never forget your grandpa, my dad, crawling all the way back down that spiral incline because he could not stand up. He would always take us to the Smoky Mountains, and where the creek are, where all the rocks are, my mom and dad, that's where they took us. I didn't realize that we were poor, but that was our recreation for the Smoky Mountains. And we would jump from rock to rock, sometimes for hours, make our own little swimming holes, and eat picnic lunches. And that was one of our favorite things to do.
Were they, when you were a kid, were they always Christ followers?
The first recognition that I knew of my mom and dad following the Lord Jesus is at a very young age. I remember some dysfunctional things that happened.
Like what?
Well, my dad got paid from working, It was before he got hard on the Ford Motor Company. It was, and I was probably 5 or 6 years old. But I remember when he came home one day, and somehow there wasn't enough money to pay the bills. He had made pretty good money, I guess, but it wasn't enough to go around. And he was so frustrated. I remember him throwing this big stack of money. I thought it was a big stack of money, and it just fell all over the living room floor. And Benny and I just started scrambling for it. And Mom was upset, and Dad was upset. But that's when things began to change. We lived on Mama Street, right there where they have the across from Atlas, where they have that one store that you buy your walking things and stuff. They had a house right across from the alley there, or no, down to the left of that. And we were on the second floor. And I remember Mom going to church, and she took me, I think she took Ben and Wanda, and we walked to church. We walked from around 3rd and Monmouth up to 6th and York. The little storefront church, his name was Earl Flynn. I found that out years later. And that's where Mom made her start. And Dad had a heavy drinking problem, heavy smoking problem. I remember that because he kept trying to quit. And he told me later, years later, that he told God if God would give him a good job where he could support his family, that he would be faithful to God, he would be faithful to whatever the kingdom needed. And he got hard on at Ford Motor Company. And that's when our life began to change. And Dad bought the house at 418 Elm Street there in Newport, Kentucky. And that's where he raised his family. And that's where things began to change.